If Amber Heard likes this author as much as she claims that she does, it really showed me how easy it is to manipulate someone's opinion. So if, like me, you're currently residing on Earth, the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial has probably taken over all of your different forms of social media, your YouTube recommendation page, as well as probably the entire reason of your being and existence. Regardless of whose side you're on, which I feel like the majority of people are on one side, but regardless of whose side you're on, this video is for you if you're interested in the trial. Originally, I wanted to make the same exact video but for books Johnny Depp has recommended, but then I watched the testimony of forensic psychologist Dr. Shannon Curry diagnosing Amber Heard with borderline and histrionic personality disorder. I was like, I wonder what type of books people with these kinds of personality traits like to read, and wonder if I have. I think that the books we recommend say a lot about our personality, but they also say a lot about how we want the people we recommend these books to perceive us. Does this sentence make sense? It does. So for example, if you were to ask me to recommend you books and I recommend Dante's Inferno and War and Peace, you're probably going to perceive me differently than if I were to recommend you Twilight. No shame to any Twilight fans out there, because I too have changed my name to Miss Cullen on Facebook in 2008. But this video isn't about me, it's about our girl Amber Heard. Well, not our girl. This book gave me the same literary prose that Johnny Depp had when he referred to Elon Musk as mollusk. On Goodreads, the summary of the book reads as such: a thought-provoking, discomforting, and beautiful novel about love, obsession, community, and friendship. The only part I agree with is the discomfort, and I wasn't discomforted by the amount of coitus happening in this book. I was discomforted by the writing style of the author. Basically, this book is about a queer woman who's also a sex worker, and it recounts 8 days, I think, in her life. While some of the points she made were interesting, the book lacked a solid writing style and it was very repetitive at times. She talked about her want of having children in almost every single chapter of the book. When I was reading the book at first, I was like, okay, this is new and interesting, but then it kept on being so repetitive that she just lost me. I'm gonna give you examples about her writing style because it's the best way to show you what I mean. Prepare yourself. And I love you, pelican. Don't choke on that fish you're drowning. And I love you, water, and the way you caress between my legs. Know that my vagina will vacuum you up, only to gush you out later on unsuspecting clients. Touching living wood rather than dead brings better luck. Gently lapped by my blonde beach waves in their post-orgasm come down, my pubic hairs seaweed slick to rest their head upon. Yum. Personally, I think that a book isn't the correct medium for her form of self-expression. I researched the author a bit, and apparently a lot of the book is inspired by her Instagram captions, and I feel that maybe it could have been better. I feel that an art installation that could maybe feature snippets of her writing and some pictures would have been a better medium for her style. Also, I don't know how much I can say this, but the book made me feel like she was very performative about her wokeness. And I'm saying this because she acknowledges her privilege in every single chapter, and the more you do something, the more you repeat it, the less it's effective to convey what you're trying to say. And she has a lot of queer friends, and she's queer herself, but the characters she introduces in the books are all described according to their sexual preference and sometimes according to their ethnicity. So for example, instead of describing me as Noor, loves reading sci-fi, is into anime, likes to travel, my favorite color is green, she would just describe me as Lebanese, Congolese, straight. It's completely reducing me to my sexual preference and my ethnicity. And I mean, I know that sexuality and ethnicity is a big part of someone's personality, but you know, characters are supposed to be human and more than uni or two-dimensional. So yeah, I didn't like the book. I enjoyed some parts because it's always interesting to learn about something you don't really know, but the book is so bad that even though I was interested by these couple of things, like, I wouldn't recommend anyone to read it. This is a memoir written by Chanel Miller, and it recounts her experience of assault by Brock Turner, a then Stanford University athlete, in 2015. The book, she takes us through all of her life, from the night of the assault to her waking up in the hospital the next day, and through the very complex and honestly dehumanizing trial and its consequences. I think this book is phenomenal. Chanel Miller as an author writes very eloquently. The sentences she forms are complex, smooth, and beautiful. I'm gonna give you an example. Apart from that, the subject of the book itself is very important and, in my opinion, has been treated perfectly. It doesn't have embellishments and doesn't shy away from portraying the full scope of her experience. She doesn't try to paint a rosy colored picture of healing or hope. She's just vulnerable and brutally honest, and it makes it so that while you're reading the book, you don't need to put on a facade of what you're feeling yourself. You can just fully embrace the honesty of the author. So the book really made me think about the performative aspect about being a victim in the eyes of the court or the public opinion. Can you still have gone through something horrible if you decide to enjoy your life? And when is it okay to allow yourself to feel something other than your trauma? It really showed me how easy it is to manipulate someone's opinion, like the court or the public, and it also showed me how awful lawyers can be. And it's important to note how our opinions can be swayed. Like, even Johnny Depp has a PR team and they're contributing to shaping our opinions, and maybe they're even contributing to how extreme some of our behavior has been as a society on this planet when it comes to the trial. For me, the book served as a motivator to the fact that a single person can change a system, no matter how flawed the system is, and even if the changes are very slow and incremental. So Amber Heard in a tweet stated that this is a book that every single person on the planet should read, and I full-heartedly agree with her. I have never read a feminist book. I do consider myself a good feminist. I don't know. I picked the book up for its title, I read it, I liked it, but basically the book is a collection of essays, and each she gives you her perspective as a feminist on different aspects of society, observing race through feminism, obesity through the lens of feminism, education, and most of all, pop culture references. She talks about things like Twilight, 90210, The Hunger Games, 50 Shades of Grey, all of these different pop culture references that were very popular at the time of the book's release.
First things first, I'm not really.
Did I enjoy the book? The thing is, if you don't understand the pop culture references, you are either not going to understand what she's talking about or completely agree with the author because you've never watched or read or heard what she's talking about, so you only have her opinion to guide you in the wilderness of pop culture. I don't feel like I'm the target audience for her. I like pop culture, but I felt like I know that pop culture can shape our perspective of the world and yada yada, but I mean, who still talks about Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey? I also didn't like the book because I didn't feel challenged. You know, as someone who's never read a feminist book before, you would think that I would have a lot to learn from reading one, but I didn't. So this book centers around the idea that humanity is and has been evolving into a superior version of itself, growing in morality through the bias of continuous advancement in science and reason, which have propelled us towards the truth, justice, and freedom. The book observes this idea and argues for it across many fields like economy, philosophy, religion, politics, and even biology at some point. And to support his claims, the author makes use of charts, psychological experiments, historical facts, and he tries to follow a scientific method to explain his reasoning. This all sounds great, and I was excited to read the book, but there are many flaws throughout the book. He has references about history and he really doesn't have nuanced answers. At some point he mentions the bombs dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he's like, yeah, you know, it's a massacre, but if we didn't do this, we would have had more Americans die. Which, I mean, okay, but this is a much more complex subject. You can't just throw a couple of sentences around and make it seem like, oh, you know, it's justifiable. The book isn't nuanced. That was my biggest issue with it. And when you talk about morality and you give these many examples and you're trying to use a scientific method according to yourself, the author, you can't, I'm British suddenly, you can't write about such a complex topic without being nuanced. I personally could have overlooked the flaws, but at some point the author starts to argue how religion can't be the basis for the advancement of morality. Well, he has a lot of arguments, but basically it's like religion, bad. He argues mostly about Christianity because he's American. It was very unidimensional, and my biggest annoyance was that he adopted a very belittling tone when it came to Christianity. Like, and you know, as an author, you have the right to voice whatever opinion you want to voice in whichever tone you want to voice it in, but you can't claim to use a scientific method and to be very scientific about the book if you're using that kind of tone, which itself is inherently unscientific. Also, I googled the author, and apparently he used to be very Christian, but then I think someone died that was close to him, and that's when he was like, oh, you know, God obviously doesn't exist because he let that person die. So I feel like he has a lot of hatred towards Christianity, and you can't let your feelings affect your scientific reasoning, which he did. So that was my biggest complaint with the book. That's why I didn't like it. The flaws that it had in its reasoning added to his unscientific and very biased point of view. And also, if you're Christian and you're reading this book, I feel like Christians are just gonna feel like, I mean, why are you basically insulting my whole religion? That's not how you're supposed to argue with someone to convince them about something, especially if they hold the opposite opinion. I felt like the book had a lot of potential to be very thought-provoking, but it felt short in the depth of thought it provoked. The only way for someone to really enjoy this book is if they don't fact-check everything the author is saying, just like Amber Heard didn't fact-check a lot of her depositions. Damn. The Properties of Perpetual Light is a collection of speeches, interviews, poetry, and essays by activist, writer, lawyer Julian Agin, or Agwan, I think it's Agin, who is an indigenous resident of Guam. The book is a great way to start to learn about the different climate change dangers that Guam faces, as well as the political issues of the island. The author is a great storyteller, and while I was reading his book, I felt immersed in the beauty of Guam, even though I've never been there. It's a short and easy read, and I would recommend it to people, but there were a couple of things that I didn't really like. Because the author makes a lot of references about the culture of the island and some political things that the island is involved in, as a reader who is not well informed about either the culture or the political climate, I felt like I couldn't really understand the book and grasp it fully. The thing is, the author is aware of this, so he includes a lot of footnotes in his chapters for readers who are not familiar with any of this to understand. But since his writing style is not very, but like it's a bit poetic, it's nice to read, and it has a certain flow to it, as you're reading the chapter, when you come across a reference or a word you don't understand, the footnote itself is written in such a different style that you feel like you're going somewhere smoothly, and then someone like smacks you, takes you somewhere else in a highway for you to understand, and then drops you back in like the garden of the author's words. I didn't like the footnotes. I thought there was way too many of them and they were way too lengthy. I also personally felt, since the author is a skilled writer, he could have easily tried to incorporate the definitions in a more flowy and smooth way inside of the text themselves. Another part of me thinks that maybe I'm just not the audience that the author wrote this book for. I don't understand Chamorro culture, and although I would love to, maybe I should just educate myself in other ways. I don't know. I Amber Heard mentioned in a lot of interviews that Ayn Rand is her favorite author and that she's read all of her books. Ayn Rand's most famous book is Cloud Atlas, and after that it's The Fountainhead. I've decided to read The Virtue of Selfishness instead because I'm not gonna read another 500-page book for this video. I'm sorry. So basically, Ayn Rand created the philosophy of objectivism, which I am not very familiar with, but basically, the definition of objectivism is the philosophy or theory that the main objective of the human experience is to pursue personal happiness and respect other humans. I am a firm believer of not having an opinion based on a single reference or a single thing that you read. So I will be reading more of Ayn Rand in the future. From this book alone, I'm not a fan so far. The book doesn't do a good job at explaining her philosophy. It doesn't hold persuasive arguments. A lot of the times, instead of explaining herself and her arguments and giving us more information, she's like, for more information, reference to Atlas Shrugged. And matter of fact, this sentence is mentioned 15 times in this book, and this is a short book. Basically, like very dumbed down version of what I understood is that she's against altruism. She thinks that it's the worst thing in the world. Her basic definition of altruism is that man has no right to exist for his own sake, that service to others is the only justification of his existence, and that self-sacrifice is the highest moral duty, virtue, and value. And again, I don't feel like I have enough knowledge to argue on this. I have personally volunteered for 8 years, and you know, one might argue that in volunteering there are selfish reasons to do it. Like, you gain a lot of skills, you get a new experience, you're part of the community. Society deems you as a more valuable member of society, so there are definitely selfish reasons to volunteer for. I'm not against that perspective, but yes, there are selfish reasons, but there are also very selfless reasons. And the people that I was helping, I didn't know them, so it wasn't like I was helping them because I loved them or something. I was just helping them because I thought it was my moral duty as a human being. Did it make me miserable? Honestly, no. It made me happy to be able to contribute a shred of happiness in someone's life. I think, again, this is a very like surface level analysis, but I think that so far her ideas are very extreme. And I mean, not to psychoanalyze anyone, but if Amber Heard likes this author as much as she claims that she does, her public and documented and observed behavior can very much be seen through the lens of this author's philosophy. You can question the motive behind a lot of Amber Heard's activism and self-portrayal. Since she follows Ayn Rand's philosophy, she's basically doing these things for herself. So the question becomes, is she doing these things because she loves doing them, or she loves the people benefiting from her doing these things, or is she doing these things because she loves what she gains by doing them, which is a positive public perception? I don't know. I don't know, Amber Heard. This is all speculation, and with this cryptic sentence I will bid you farewell.